where we have an update in that devastating case that we've been following here at Court TV, the murder of Sade Robinson. In April, authorities arrested and charged suspect Maxwell Anderson in the death of the missing teen. They say that Robinson went out on a date with him on April 1st, the night that she went missing. Now, her car was eventually found torched, and severed human remains were found scattered around Milwaukee, including a leg. Now, these remains were later confirmed to be that of Robinson.
First dates, a mix of excitement and nervousness, the possibility of connection. For 19-year-old Sade Robinson, her April 1, 2024 dinner with Maxwell Anderson would be her last. Within days, parts of her body would be found scattered across Milwaukee County parks and beaches: a severed leg, a torso, an arm with pink nail polish. This isn't just another crime story. This is about a young woman with dreams, a family who loved her, and a system that failed to protect her from a man with a violent past. If you believe Sade's story deserves to be told, if you think her family deserves justice, please hit that subscribe button now. Every subscription helps amplify voices that would otherwise be silenced. Every like and comment pushes this story to more viewers who need to hear it. Because the truth is, what happened to Sade Robinson could happen to anyone. And only by understanding these cases can we hope to prevent future tragedies. Tonight, we'll walk through the events of April 1, 2024, and the devastating aftermath that followed. We'll examine how a college student with her whole life ahead of her crossed paths with a predator, and how that chance encounter ended in unimaginable horror. But first, let's get to know the young woman at the center of this tragedy. A daughter, a friend, a hard-working student whose absence leaves a void that can never be filled. Born on May 10, 2004, Sade Carlina Robinson was just beginning to build her adult life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At 19, she balanced college classes with her job at Pizza Shuttle, a local pizzeria where co-workers came to rely on her consistency and work ethic. If Sade was scheduled for a shift, she showed up, no questions asked. She was responsible and reliable, one co-worker would later tell investigators. When she didn't come to work that morning, we knew something was wrong immediately. This wasn't a young woman who disappeared on a whim or regularly missed obligations. Her sudden absence triggered immediate concern among those who knew her patterns and personality. Sade's relationship with her mother, Sheena Scarborough, stood at the center of her life. The bond between mother and daughter was evident to anyone who knew them. They shared regular communication, with Sheena often checking in on her daughter's whereabouts through a location-sharing app, a precaution that would later prove crucial to the investigation. Unlike many true crime stories where victims' lives are reduced to their final moments, Sade was more than her tragic end. She was a typical college student navigating the challenges of early adulthood, balancing academics, work responsibilities, and social connections. There's no evidence she had children or was in any long-term romantic relationship at the time of her death. Her life resembled that of countless other young women across America, working toward goals, maintaining friendships, staying connected to family. The ordinary nature of her existence makes what happened all the more terrifying. Have you ever known someone whose absence would be noticed immediately? Someone so reliable that a missed appointment would trigger instant concern? That reliability, that consistency is what made Sade's disappearance so alarming so quickly. As we continue, remember that behind every statistic is a person with connections, habits, and people who notice when they're gone. For Sade, those connections would set in motion an investigation that would reveal something truly horrific. April 1, 2024, a Monday evening in Milwaukee. Sade Robinson prepared for a first date with 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson, a man she had recently met and knew little about. The 14-year age gap between them might have raised eyebrows, but dating apps and social media have made such connections increasingly common. Anderson chose a seafood restaurant in Milwaukee for their meeting, a place where he had previously worked. Perhaps this choice gave him a sense of control, familiarity with his surroundings, or simply confidence in a setting he knew well. For Sade, it was just a restaurant, a neutral location for a first encounter. Surveillance cameras captured their arrival and time inside the establishment. The footage shows them dining together, engaged in conversation. Nothing in their visible interactions suggested the horror that would follow. They appeared to outside observers like any other couple on a first date, talking, eating, perhaps assessing compatibility. The cameras also documented them leaving the restaurant together. This would be the last time Sade Robinson was seen alive on any surveillance system. Notably, there was no footage of them in the parking area, a critical gap in the visual timeline of that evening. After leaving the restaurant, Anderson suggested they continue their evening at a nearby sports bar. Sade agreed, extending what had apparently been a pleasant enough first meeting. Cell phone data would later confirm their presence at this second location. What conversations transpired between them? What did Anderson say to gain Sade's trust? These questions remain unanswered, but at some point during the evening, Sade made a fateful decision to accompany Anderson to his home. Her phone's location data would later reveal their movement from the sports bar to Anderson's residence. For Sade, this was likely just another step in getting to know someone new. For Anderson, evidence would later suggest it may have been part of a premeditated plan. As night fell over Milwaukee, Sade Robinson had no way of knowing she would never return home. She couldn't have known about Anderson's violent criminal history, his convictions for domestic abuse, intimidating a witness, disorderly conduct. She couldn't have known about the disturbing space in his basement that investigators would later discover. She was simply a 19-year-old on a date, making the kinds of decisions young adults make every day across America, the kind that usually end with nothing worse than an awkward goodbye or plans for a second meeting. But for Sade Robinson, this ordinary Monday evening would be her last. April 2, 2024. Morning arrived at Pizza Shuttle, but Sade didn't. Her scheduled shift began, yet her workstation remained empty. For her co-workers, this was immediately concerning, completely out of character for the dependable young woman they knew. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unread. The hours ticked by with no word, no explanation for her absence. This wasn't a case of someone simply running late or forgetting a shift change. This was a glaring deviation from an established pattern of reliability. By afternoon, concern had transformed into alarm. Sade's co-workers contacted her family, who confirmed they hadn't heard from her either. Her mother, Sheena Scarborough, immediately sensed something was wrong. The close relationship between mother and daughter meant regular communication. Silence was not normal. Sheena checked the Life 360 app she shared with her daughter, hoping to locate Sade's phone. The last recorded movements from the previous night showed a concerning pattern: the seafood restaurant, the sports bar, an unfamiliar residence, and finally, a park. After that, nothing. The digital breadcrumbs ended. A formal missing person report was filed that same day. Police began their standard procedures, checking hospitals, jails, contacting friends and associates. But this wasn't a typical missing person case, and events would soon accelerate in a horrifying direction. That very same day, April 2nd, a passerby made a gruesome discovery in a Milwaukee park. A human leg, severed at the hip, lay discarded like trash. Police secured the scene, collected the remains, and began the process of identification. DNA testing would soon confirm what no one wanted to hear. The leg belonged to Sade Robinson. In less than 24 hours, what began as a missing person case had transformed into something far more disturbing. A homicide investigation was now underway, with detectives racing to piece together Sade's final hours. What would you do if someone you care about suddenly disappeared? How long would you wait before sounding the alarm? For Sade's family and co-workers, the answer was immediate, because they knew her character, her habits, her reliability. They knew something was wrong because they knew her. As investigators began their work, they had no idea that this case would become increasingly horrific with each passing day. The discovery of the leg was just the beginning of a trail of evidence that would reveal the full extent of the brutality inflicted on Sade Robinson. The severed leg found in Warrenmont Park changed everything. What began as a missing person case now carried the weight of confirmed violence. Investigators moved with renewed urgency, knowing they were no longer searching for a missing teen, but hunting for a killer. DNA testing quickly confirmed what many feared. The leg belonged to Sade Robinson. This wasn't just a homicide, it was a dismemberment, suggesting a level of calculation and brutality that shocked even experienced detectives. For Sade's mother, Sheena Scarborough, the news was devastating beyond comprehension. No parent prepares for such information. No mother expects to learn her daughter's body has been dismembered with parts scattered like discarded waste. The pain of not knowing the full circumstances of her final moments, Sheena would later say in a statement, and the anguish of waiting to recover all of her remains for a proper farewell was unbearable. The discovery triggered an intensive search of the surrounding areas. Police combed through parks, wooded areas, and waterways looking for additional remains. The community watched in horror as the search expanded, with each day bringing new grim headlines. Investigators turned to the Life 360 data from Sade's phone, which had already provided crucial location information. The digital trail placed her at several key locations on the night of April 1st: the seafood restaurant, the sports bar, Maxwell Anderson's home, and finally, the park where her leg was discovered. This digital evidence became the backbone of the investigation, creating a timeline of Sade's final hours. It pointed directly to Maxwell Anderson as the last person to see her alive. If you're watching this video right now, you're helping keep Sade's story alive. You're ensuring she isn't forgotten, that her case remains in the public eye. Please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue telling these important stories and advocating for victims who can no longer speak for themselves. For families like Sade's, public attention can make the difference between a case going cold and achieving justice. Every share, every comment, every subscription is a small act of support for those left behind to pick up the pieces. As investigators continued their work, they made another disturbing discovery. Sade's car had been found completely destroyed by fire not far from where her remains began to surface. The burning appeared deliberate, an attempt to destroy evidence. This wasn't a crime of passion or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was methodical. The investigation was accelerating, but for Sade's family, time had stopped. Their world had collapsed into an unending nightmare, one that was about to reveal even more horrific details. With Maxwell Anderson identified as the prime suspect, police obtained a search warrant for his duplex. What they discovered inside painted a disturbing picture of premeditation and attempted cover-up. Blood traces marked a bedroom and continued along a path leading to the basement. Multiple gasoline containers were found throughout the property, the same accelerant likely used to burn Sade's car. The evidence suggested not just murder, but careful planning to destroy proof of the crime. Most disturbing was what investigators found in Anderson's basement, a space described in police reports as a sex dungeon. Blood was discovered in this area as well. Though testing revealed it didn't match Sade's, this raised alarming questions about potential previous victims and Anderson's history of violence. Meanwhile, eyewitness accounts and video evidence placed Anderson at the scene of Sade's burned car. The pieces were fitting together, revealing a timeline of horror. The date, the murder, the dismemberment, and the systematic attempt to destroy evidence. On April 4, just 3 days after Sade's disappearance, police arrested Maxwell Anderson. The speed of the arrest spoke to the strength of the evidence against him. Digital data, physical evidence, and witness statements all pointed in one direction. But the investigation was far from complete. The search for Sade's remains continued, with grim discoveries coming in succession. On April 18, a passerby walking along a Lake Michigan beach made a horrific find. A human torso and arm. DNA testing confirmed these belonged to Sade Robinson, adding to the family's grief while providing some small measure of closure. On May 11, more than a month after Sade's disappearance, another discovery came from Waukegan Municipal Beach in Illinois, approximately 50 miles from Milwaukee. A human arm, later confirmed through DNA to be Sade's, had washed ashore, demonstrating the extensive efforts taken to dispose of her remains across a wide geographic area. Other body parts, including a foot with pink nail polish that matched what Sade was wearing on the night of her disappearance, were found near the site where her car was burned. The scattered nature of these discoveries suggested a calculated effort to prevent identification and complicate the investigation, a plan that ultimately failed due to modern forensic techniques and digital evidence. What state or country are you watching from? Has a case like this happened in your area? The sad reality is that while Sade's story is uniquely tragic, violence against women occurs everywhere, crossing all geographic and demographic boundaries. As investigators continued their methodical work, the Robinson family lived in a state of suspended grief, unable to fully mourn without the recovery of all Sade's remains, yet forced to confront new trauma with each discovery. The search for Sade Robinson's complete remains became a heartbreaking marathon for both investigators and her family. Each discovery brought a mixture of relief and renewed grief. Another piece of the puzzle recovered, but another confirmation of the brutality inflicted upon her. The timeline of discoveries painted a disturbing picture of how extensively her remains had been scattered. April 2. The severed leg found in Warnemont Park, the first confirmation of foul play. April 5. A foot with pink nail polish discovered near the location where Sade's car had been burned, a detail that matched what she was wearing on the night of her disappearance. April 12. Human remains found near 30th and Lisbon in Milwaukee. April 13th. Additional remains discovered near 31st and Galena. April 14. More human remains located near 30th and Galena, marking 3 consecutive days of discoveries across Milwaukee County. April 18th. A torso and arm found on a Lake Michigan beach, confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Sade. May 11. A human arm discovered on Waukegan Municipal Beach in Illinois, approximately 50 miles from Milwaukee, identified as Sade's through DNA analysis. The geographic spread of these discoveries, spanning 2 states and covering dozens of miles, revealed the extensive efforts taken to conceal the crime. It wasn't just a murder, it was a calculated attempt to prevent identification and hinder investigation. For Sheena Scarborough, Sade's mother, each new discovery reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. The prolonged recovery process denied her the closure of a proper funeral and the ability to say goodbye to her daughter in one final, complete ceremony. The anguish of waiting to recover all of her remains for a proper farewell, as Sheena described it, added an additional layer of trauma to an already unimaginable loss. Law enforcement officials continued their search efforts, combing parks, waterways, and wooded areas throughout the region. Despite their diligence, the sad reality remained: not all of Sade's remains have been recovered. This incomplete recovery left her family in a state of limbo, unable to fully process their grief, constantly wondering if another phone call would bring news of another discovery. It's a unique form of torment that few can comprehend. Mourning not just a death, but the deliberate desecration of a loved one's body. The scattered nature of the remains also served as evidence of the killer's state of mind. The lengths taken to dispose of evidence, the multiple disposal sites, the crossing of state lines. These weren't impulsive actions, but deliberate choices made to evade justice. For investigators, each recovery provided additional evidence and strengthened the case against Maxwell Anderson. For Sade's family, each discovery was another wound to their already shattered hearts. Maxwell Anderson wasn't unknown to the criminal justice system before his encounter with Sade Robinson. At 33 years old, he had accumulated a troubling record that painted a picture of escalating violence and disregard for others. His criminal history included multiple convictions, domestic abuse, drunk driving, disorderly conduct, and intimidating a witness. This pattern of offenses revealed a man with poor impulse control and a propensity for violence, particularly toward women. The intimidation of a witness charge was especially concerning, suggesting previous attempts to manipulate the justice system and prevent accountability for his actions. Anderson had worked at the seafood restaurant where he took Sade on their first and only date. This wasn't a random choice of venue, but a calculated decision to operate in familiar territory, where he might have felt more in control. Despite this extensive criminal background, Anderson wasn't under any active supervision or monitoring at the time of Sade's murder. He moved freely through society, presenting himself as just another dating prospect to unsuspecting women like Sade. The search of Anderson's home revealed disturbing insights into his private life. Beyond the blood evidence and gasoline containers, investigators discovered what they described as a sex dungeon in his basement. Blood found in this area didn't match Sade's, raising alarming questions about potential previous victims. This wasn't a crime committed in a moment of passion or a date gone wrong. The evidence, multiple disposal sites, the burning of Sade's car, the apparent cleaning of the crime scene, pointed to premeditation and familiarity with techniques to destroy evidence. Anderson's actions after the murder further demonstrated calculation rather than panic. He didn't flee the area or turn himself in, overcome with remorse. Instead, he methodically disposed of evidence and attempted to continue his normal life until police arrived at his door. The question that haunts many who follow this case is how someone with Anderson's history remained free to commit such a crime. How did the system fail to identify the danger he posed? How many warning signs were missed or ignored? These questions highlight the gaps in our current approaches to monitoring individuals with histories of violence and protecting potential victims. Anderson's case isn't unique. Many perpetrators of violent crimes have previous offenses that escalated over time. For Sade Robinson, crossing paths with Maxwell Anderson meant encountering a predator with a documented history of violence, information she had no way of accessing before agreeing to that fatal first date. On April 4, 2024, just 3 days after Sade's disappearance, police arrested Maxwell Anderson. The swift action reflected the strength of evidence against him. Digital location data, physical evidence from his home, and his connection to the sites where remains were discovered. By April 12, prosecutors had formally charged Anderson with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson of property other than a building. These charges carried the potential for life imprisonment if convicted. The severity reflected both the heinous nature of the crime and the substantial evidence collected by investigators. Anderson appeared in Milwaukee County Court, where a judge set his bail at $5 million, 0 cents, an amount that ensured he would remain in custody throughout the legal proceedings. During this court appearance, he entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. The state prosecutor revealed during the hearing that blood evidence had been found in Anderson's home, strengthening the case against him. While Anderson has not confessed to the crime, prosecutors expressed confidence in the evidence collected. The legal process for cases of this magnitude typically moves slowly, with multiple hearings, evidence reviews, and potential motions by the defense before reaching trial. For Sade's family, this means a prolonged journey through the justice system, reliving their trauma with each court appearance. Gina Scarborough, Sade's mother, has attended court proceedings, facing her daughter's alleged killer across the courtroom. The strength required for such confrontations is difficult to fathom, sitting in the same room as the person accused of not just taking her daughter's life, but desecrating her body. The family continues to plead for answers and the return of Sade's remaining body parts for a proper burial. This additional layer of anguish, the incomplete recovery of remains, compounds their grief and denies them full closure. While the criminal justice system moves forward with its proceedings, no verdict or sentence can truly deliver justice for Sade Robinson. No punishment can restore her life or erase her family's pain. The best the system can offer is accountability and the prevention of future harm. As this case progresses through the courts, it serves as a stark reminder of how quickly a life can be extinguished and the ripple effects of violence that extend far beyond the victim. Sade's friends, family, co-workers, and community all bear the weight of her loss and the manner of her death. The charges against Anderson represent society's formal condemnation of his alleged actions, but the true measure of justice may lie in how we respond collectively to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Sade Robinson's story isn't just a tragedy to be mourned, it's a stark reminder of the dangers that can hide behind seemingly normal interactions in today's dating landscape. Her case highlights critical safety concerns that everyone, particularly young adults, should consider. The reality of modern dating is that we often meet strangers with limited information about their background or character. Dating apps and social media create connections that bypass traditional social networks that might otherwise provide warnings or context about potentially dangerous individuals. Maxwell Anderson's extensive criminal history was information Sade likely had no access to before agreeing to meet him. This information asymmetry, where one party knows their own violent tendencies while the other remains unaware, creates inherent risk. Several practical safety measures might help reduce similar risks. First, consider meeting new people only in public places with plenty of witnesses, and remain in public for the entire interaction. Sade's decision to go to Anderson's home, while completely normal in dating contexts, removed the protection that public scrutiny provides. Second, share your location and plans with trusted friends or family. Sade's use of the Life 360 app ultimately helped investigators track her movements and build their case, but a real-time check-in system with friends might have created an opportunity for intervention. Third, consider researching potential dates before meeting. While this may feel uncomfortable, many court records are publicly available online. A simple search might reveal concerning criminal histories like Anderson's. Fourth, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong during an interaction, it's better to appear rude by leaving abruptly than to ignore warning signals that your subconscious may be detecting. The burden of safety shouldn't fall solely on potential victims. As a society, we must address how we monitor individuals with histories of violence and how we share that information to prevent future harm. The system that allowed Anderson to appear as just another dating prospect, despite his record, requires serious examination. What safety precautions do you take when meeting someone new? Have you ever felt uncomfortable on a date and decided to leave? Your experiences and practices might help others develop their own safety strategies. These conversations aren't about creating fear or suspicion of everyone we meet. Rather, they're about acknowledging real risks and developing practical approaches to minimize them. Dating and forming new connections are natural human activities that shouldn't be abandoned out of fear, but they can be approached with awareness and caution. Sade's case reminds us that behind statistics about violence against women are real people with dreams, relationships, and futures that are irreparably damaged or destroyed. Her story deserves to be told not just as a tragedy, but as a catalyst for change in how we approach dating safety and monitor those with violent histories. Sade Robinson was 19 years old, a college student, a daughter, a reliable co-worker, a young woman with her entire future ahead of her. Her life wasn't defined by how it ended, but by the connections she made, the responsibilities she honored, and the love she shared with her family. Yet her story serves as a powerful reminder of vulnerabilities in our systems, both social and legal. Maxwell Anderson, with his history of violence and intimidation, shouldn't have been able to present himself as just another dating prospect. The warning signs were there in his criminal record, but no mechanism existed to protect unsuspecting women like Sade. As her case moves through the justice system, Sade's family continues their painful wait. They wait for the recovery of all her remains. They wait for court proceedings to deliver some measure of accountability. They wait for answers that may never fully come about what happened in those final hours. Gina Scarborough faces a mother's worst nightmare, not just the loss of her daughter, but the knowledge of how she suffered and the ongoing discovery of her remains across 2 states. No parent should endure such torment. For every Sade Robinson whose story makes headlines, countless others face violence that goes unreported or unnoticed. The true measure of how we honor Sade's memory lies in how we respond, not just with sympathy, but with action. If this story moved you, if it made you think about safety or the gaps in our systems, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your subscription isn't just support for our work. It's a statement that these stories matter, that victims deserve to be remembered as more than statistics. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Have you ever felt unsafe while dating? What precautions do you take? Your insights might help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. By liking and sharing this video, you help ensure Sade's story reaches more people. You contribute to raising awareness about dating safety and the need for better monitoring of those with violent histories. You become part of a community saying that what happened to Sade Robinson matters, and that we want to prevent similar tragedies. Sade won't see justice. She won't graduate college, build a career, or grow old surrounded by people who love her. But her story can create change. It can save lives. It can be more than just another tragic headline. That's the power you have right now to transform a senseless loss into a catalyst for awareness and prevention. To ensure that Sade Robinson is remembered not just for how she died, but for how her story might help others live. Thank you for bearing witness to Sade's story. May she rest in peace, and may her family someday find the closure they so desperately deserve.